The government promised transparency, order, and peace. They named it the Lux Veritas Protocol. Light and truth. I believed in their vision. I worked in a nameless office, beneath concrete and silence, where cold terminals and humming lights oversaw the minds of the broken. The Lux Veritas Protocol was elegant in theory. Small neural implants administered during sedation, encoded with behavioral correctives and memory anchors. They didn't call it erasure. They called it alignment, bringing people to light and truth. My title was Neural Rehabilitation Specialist. What I really did was monitor the outcomes of those processed by the protocol. Criminals, or so the file said. Men and women flagged for violent ideation, trauma cycles, antisocial behavior. Their minds were mapped, rewritten, and reintroduced in society as new citizens, better citizens, safer. I knew the process worked. I could see it with my own eyes. Crime stopped nearly overnight. People stopped arguing, and fear seemed to nearly disappear. You could walk the streets at night again. I couldn't wait to do my part in maintaining this beautiful new world. My days were filled with routine assessments, graphs, brainwave readouts, emotional response analyses. I'd sit in a room with two-way mirrors, watching the newly adjusted speak about the past with detachment and control. The files always matched the results. Aggression neutralized, grief overwritten. The numbers looked good. The first subject I monitored blinked 5 times in quick succession when speaking about his mother. Odd, but not unusual. A tic, a reflex, we all have them. That evening, my wife and I had dinner at home. Our daughter joined us, chatting about a class project she was excited about. Something involving old cities and how they were built. She was animated, hands waving as she spoke, her thoughts leaping faster than her words could keep up. She asked questions, not just to us, but to herself, always chasing new ideas. She had her mother's curiosity. After she went to bed, my wife and I talked about the project too. She asked about my day, not out of politeness, but with genuine interest. I told her it was my first active subject, and she smiled. Said she was proud of me. She asked questions about the patients, the tech, how I felt about the work. She frowned when I explained how the memory pathways were rewritten.
Doesn't that change who they are?
I shook my head. It doesn't change them, it purifies, like filtering toxins from water. You don't change what it is, you just remove what shouldn't be there. She didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. She always did have a curiosity about the world that kept me grounded. That night I slept soundly. I felt a quiet pride settle in my chest, like I had hoped to carve away something dark from the world. It was the first time I felt the real weight of the work, not as a technician or analyst, but as a participant in something larger than myself. I couldn't wait for work the next day. The second subject paused before responding to basic questions, as if accessing a script, but he was calm, cooperative, and healthy. It wasn't until the third, a woman who paused mid-sentence, eyes twitching slightly, before offering a phrase I recognized but didn't expect.
Not all burdens are ours to keep.
It was one of the government's newer taglines. Subtle, most poetic. I'd see it once in a subway poster, half obscured by glare. I wrote it down, just a note. Later, I overheard a technician in the break room mutter the same phrase while staring into his coffee, unprompted. Perhaps one of his subjects had also uttered the phrase. A few days later, I stopped at a corner cafe before work. The morning was quiet, too quiet, and something about the stillness made me pay attention. At the table next to mine, a woman muttered to herself while stirring her coffee.
Harmony through correction.
she said, and then again louder.
Harmony through correction.
She stared ahead, unblinking, for almost a full minute. No phone, no book, just silence. And that phrase hanging in the air like a fog. A man on the train, dressed in a maintenance uniform, blinked the 5 count when I asked for the time. I began to watch more carefully. At work, I started revealing older files, cases marked as 100% successful. One man, flagged for compulsive behavior, now worked in public sanitation. He loses emotionless in his check-ins, precise with his words. I watched old footage before the procedure. He was jittery, expressive. After, a void in his eyes. I mentioned this to a colleague. He laughed it off.
You're getting clinical drift. You've been staring at too many profiles. Go home.
So I did. My own wife, once skeptical of the protocol, now defended it, passionately. She brought it up unprompted one evening as we washed dishes.
You know, it really is better now. People are calmer, more reasonable.
I agreed, but something about the way she said it felt rehearsed. Not the content so much as the delivery. Her voice lacked inflection, her cadence slightly off. Words were clipped, neutral. When I pressed her, asked her why she'd changed her mind, she paused, just a moment, and said,
We're safer now. It's good to feel safe.
I let it go, but the way she said it stayed with me. The next morning, I noticed her phone was missing from the charger. It had always been there. Her morning routine was to check the weather and scroll through the news while drinking tea. When I asked her where it was, she looked confused.
We don't own a phone.
I didn't push, but my stomach turned. I remembered buying it for her. Remembered the model, the color, even the case she picked out. She used it every day. I had seen it in her hands the week before. That night, I woke up and found her sitting in the living room, not moving, just staring at the television, which was off. She didn't react when I spoke her name the first time. My notes turned to pages, then binders. I started reviewing footage from our front door camera, then the hallway, then the living room. At first it was curiosity, then pattern recognition. Small gestures out of place, pauses in conversation that hadn't been there before. Eventually I started timing responses, watching for repetition. Her mannerisms had shifted. Her laughter no longer crinkled to her nose. My daughter had started repeating phrases from government learning modules. Exact phrases, word for word. I began to keep a list of these words and phrases they now used. It grew longer every day. One afternoon, my daughter stood completely still for several minutes while the kettle boiled. Just stood, watching. When I asked her what she was doing, she just said she was waiting. The next day, I confronted his supervisor. His eyes glazed slightly, his head tilted.
You were just overworked. The protocol is functioning as intended. No overreach and no civilian impact.
But I knew that was a lie. There was overreach. It was deliberate. It was silent. And it was spreading. That night, I searched the house for listening devices. Behind furniture, inside light fixtures, beneath outlet covers. It felt paranoid, but the silence had taken on an unnatural weight. I was starting to wonder if they were watching me, not just the patients. As I finished checking the bedrooms, my daughter sat up in bed and asked,
Why don't you remember the lake trip?
We had never been to a lake, or so I thought. When I brought it up to my wife later, she told the same story. They described it in vivid detail. Where we stayed, what we ate, the canoe tipping over. Every memory was bright, harmless, and perfectly aligned. No arguments, no mishaps, no variation. Like remembering a commercial. I searched the house for any photos, any proof. I couldn't find a single picture of that trip. Not on my devices, not in the cloud, not in storage. But they remembered it. Same details, same timeline, same tone. It felt synthetic, shiny and clean, but hollow. As if someone had designed it to be sturdy but forgettable. Just enough to blend in. The morning after, I was summoned for a compliance review. Not unusual, routine. It happened quarterly, sometimes more often if the technician had flagged an anomaly or showed signs of fatigue. But this room was new. Larger, colder. The walls curved inward like a lens. No visible doors, no panels, no clock. I sat alone for what felt like half an hour. No screen, no file to review. Just the quiet hum of something beyond the walls. Then a woman entered. She wore neutral gray and carried a clipboard, nothing else. No badge, no name, no expression. She didn't sit, just stood across from me.
Tell me about your wife.
The question caught me off guard, but I answered carefully. She's passionate, believes in the system.
Has she changed?
I hesitated. My mind felt slow and focused. Pressure behind the eyes. No, I said. But even as the word left my mouth, I wasn't sure it was true. I wasn't sure what I remembered anymore. She watched me for a moment longer, then scribbled something on her clipboard. The air felt thinner. The lights above began to pulse, softly at first, then in a slow, rhythmic pattern. My chest tightened. She made no further comment, just turned slightly, listening to something only she could hear. Then the lights dimmed. I awoke in my bed. There was a dull ache at the base of my skull, like the residue of a long dream I couldn't quite recall. Sunlight through the blinds, coffee brewing, familiar warmth. My wife handed me a steaming mug.
You've been working too hard.
I nodded. The words came easily. I'm just glad we're safe. My daughter called from the kitchen.
We are safe. We're better.
I agreed, finished my coffee, went to work. I passed another specialist in the hallway. Our eyes met. The other man blinked. 5 quick times. I blinked back.